back to another episode. I'm your host, Luke One, and with me as always I have my good friend and I'd like to say channel favourite because of his beautiful voice, Luke 10. Hello Luke, how you doing mate?
I'm annoyed because I wanted to do the intro today.
Oh my god, mate, I come in with all this energy and then you just...
Yeah, so when you said we're friends,
yeah,
I don't necessarily agree.
all right, okay.
I think we're best friends.
Oh mate, that's beautiful.
See, I turned that. You didn't see that coming, did you?
A little tear just came out.
Hello students of the Let's Talk Procurement podcast. It is your favorite sound guy back again for another cameo. The audio at this part of the episode had to be cut due to some audio difficulties which you can thank Luke One for. So I thought I would narrate this section for you guys. Let's begin. Due to Academy Award-winning audio editing on the Stakeholders Part 1 episode, the two Luke's stakeholders really wanted a Part 2. So here you have it. Help you guys enjoy.
We have been notified officially that we're the 86th, there's a bit of French there as well, 86th ranked pod for the careers
76,
segment.
isn't it?
76, oh.
Yeah.
It ended in a 6. That's how accurate it will be. Maybe we're sixth careers pod in the whole of France.
Yeah,
which I think is quite impressive.
Careers pod.
Especially since we don't have any French at all on the podcast.
I mean, you slated them in the Duck Up episode, so perhaps that's...
Yeah. Maybe that's just them building a case against me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with that. Look, we're trending in France for careers. Not sure what career advice you're getting from us, but, if it's moving you in a direction, thank you.
Yeah, and before we get into the meat, I did want to talk about a review that I got from my mother.
Okay.
I listened. Me and her were driving somewhere, and I put the podcast on, and she made it really dramatic. She said, "Oh, I've got something to tell you about this podcast. I've got an opinion on it." And I was like, "Okay, go on. What is it?" She's like, "No, I'll tell you after." She looked really kind of like stressed by it. Anyway, gets to the end of the pod, and at this point, my heart's beating fast. I'm thinking she's going to say,
no.
like, you need to buck your ideas up, son. Cancel this podcast. Never talk about it again. But then she goes, "I don't like how your name's Luke 2." And I was thinking,
did she even listen to it? Luke 2?
Exactly. That's why I feel comfortable slightly slating her in this segment, because if she didn't listen to the numerous times you called me Luke 10 before, then she's not going to listen to this. So,
well, why don't we come up with a name for her then, and we'll just call her Mum 2 or Mum 10.
Mum 10, I like that.
Yeah, Mum 10. So any references to Mum 10, maybe she doesn't go in the Hall of Fame anymore. Maybe we kick her off.
Oh, she's in the relegation zone. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, thin ice, yellow card, or a blue card. A little blue card. Speaking of Mum 10s and the French as well, it got me thinking. What do you call a lazy kangaroo?
Go on.
A pouch potato.
It's a thinker. That's a deep thinker. That joke.
Beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, it's just chilling in the pouch.
Yeah, you've got to, like, some people might think they've got the joke, but you really got to take it down to another level. Think about it again on another level, right? That's my advice.
Yes, great advice. So what's on the agenda today? Stakeholders Part 2. What are you saying?
I'm saying that I've got a bit of a cold, so I want the listeners to get some shot glasses ready. Anytime I cough, you have to do a shot.
A shot of Calpol.
A shot of... I'll leave that decision up to the listeners. But yeah. That was a cough.
You can't just fake force it into the mic though.
Okay, a fake one doesn't count.
Yeah. That's not really the topic, though, is it?
The topic is, well, in fact, the topic is stakeholders, which is brilliant because we have someone here who is extremely well versed in the topic of stakeholder engagement. You know, we're really fortunate, to have Luke One, the professor of RIS. He's got a doctorate in reflexive risology.
Love that.
So he's gonna share with us some good advice and tips and stakeholders. But I think we wanted to start talking about Aubrey, didn't we?
Yeah, look, I was thinking you can't really go into a SIPS exam quoting RIS Doctor Luke One. That looks kind of unprofessional, so it's probably better to reference someone a bit more well established. So we'll go for Aubrey. Those of you who don't know who Aubrey is, he's probably better well known by his surname. That is Mendelow, and obviously he's very, very famous for his beloved matrix. So his Mendelow's stakeholder matrix is it's a beautiful thing. And I think what you find is we come across it levels 4, levels 5, level 6, and quite often in actually our work environments as well.
Write that down, write that down!
So are we going to paint a visual picture? Most people listening to this might already know what the matrix looks like.
Let's give them a visual of, so we're going to say, what do you call them? Axes. Line facing upwards, line facing sideways, right? A lying down one and a standy uppy one, or a horizontal and a vertical. Is that fair?
Let me pass an absolute golden nugget to the listeners. The axis that is on the left and goes upwards is called the y-axis, and I remember that by saying Y to the sky. Think about it. Now you'll never forget. The y-axis is that one.
Right. Okay. No, that was very helpful. Thank you. So anyway, creating a visual, you've got the Y to the sky axis. So nice tall axis there. You've then got the x-axis, and it's lying on its x. I don't know. I can't think of anything that's as good as that. But yeah, obviously horizontal, left to right, and then we've got the two metrics that sit with it. So we've got power and interest. So we know Luke 10 is a big fan of power. He likes to think he's a muscly god carved from
bicep power.
Yeah. How would you define power in this instance? Obviously not yourself power.
I would say it's something to do with the influence in terms of decision making that someone's got over a decision, really. So low to high, can they change the outcome of the procurement, for example, or can they change the requirements within the specification or something like that?
So let's say the company A wants to go and buy company B. Do I, as the finance manager of that company, have high or low power in this decision?
Of company A, your finance.
Company A, yep.
Yeah, high power.
Yeah, so I'll be relatively high, right? There are probably people with a higher power level, like the owners, the shareholders, directors, but yeah, that's kind of how you look at it. And then lying down on its side, paint me like one of your French girls, is the x-axis, and we're looking at that is power, isn't it? Y to the sky,
yeah,
is your interest.
Power.
Yeah.
Is it?
Or power. I think it's reversible, right? Because it's a matrix, so it can be either way.
This isn't confusing. Let's just say power is on the Y.
Yeah. And then on the x-axis is level of interest. So interest for me is how interested is literally, as it says, how interested are you in that particular project or the success of that project. So going back to company A, we would say the finance manager, how interested are they in the success of the purchase of company B?
Yeah, probably quite interested.
Yeah,
Probably.
probably quite interested.
Like, for example, could it be customers, for example, who use the service are interested in the decision that gets made around what supplier gets chosen?
Potentially, yeah.
Or say, for example, you know when they change the recipes of foods and like chocolate bars and stuff, people get really concerned about that, don't they? They go, oh, back in my day, the recipe used to be this.
Oh, yeah.
So they've got a high interest in that decision.
But low power for sure. It's a bit like the Yorkie bar. Did you ever have a Yorkie bar? Do you know what they are?
I know what they are. I think I've had one as well.
So when I was a child, they used to be advertised as not for women.
Yeah.
So basically, it was a classic, like, just aiming it at men. And the men, obviously, when they removed the not for women logo, probably a bit upset because it was like their chocolate bar, right? But they had no say in it, really. Because it's in this day and age, you can't be having a sexist chocolate bar. So back to the quadrant anyway. There's 4 types of stakeholders according to the Mendelow stakeholder matrix, and it will depend on both the level of interest and the level of power of the respective stakeholder or stakeholder group that we are looking at. So we have situation where they've got low interest and low power. Situation 1. You've then got low interest, high power. You've got high power, high interest, and high power, low interest. So there's the 4 different combinations there.
Imagine it like a window pane in terms of they're split equally into 4 quadrants. And then it's kind of like you've got all the combinations, so high and high, high and low, low and high, low and low.
And why do you think it's important to kind of establish those different groups based on power and interest?
So that will determine the amount of effort, or I don't know if that's the right word, it might be, that you put into communicating the decision with them or involving them in the decision making process.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think actually based on the category they fall into is how you treat them and how you manage their input. Because if they're not managed, you could have a lot of people that have low power but might be interested trying to influence your decisions. And if you're not cognizant of the fact that they are actually low power and relatively unimportant to the actual outcome, you might end up being guided by those guys when you don't need to be. So what I'll do is I'll go through each group again, and we can just look at kind of what Mendelow defined them as in terms of how you manage them. So the big daddy, the one we like the most, and the one we're probably all able to identify easiest, is probably the high power, high interest individuals. I thought you were going to say something, sorry mate, but you were just choking out in your take your shots, guys. High power, high interest, they are classified by Mendelow as a group to manage closely. Is that a fair assessment from your point of view?
Yeah, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Because those are going to be your key set of stakeholders, and those are the people that you're going to be working closely with. They've obviously got a big influence. So in terms of a procurement perspective, who would that be? Kind of like the profit center manager for where the budget for a certain item's coming from, potentially.
Yeah, maybe the program director or project manager. Obviously, their whole performance is based on the success of that project, so they're highly interested, and they're also fairly well empowered to make decisions on the project. It's really, really important that you are engaging these individuals as often as possible in a way that works. But obviously, with those individuals, you don't want to just be bombarding them for the sake of it, but you have to make the sort of best efforts possible to kind of satisfy them and ensure you are meeting the needs. If you piss them off, you aren't going to be helping yourself out.
Well, so next we've got high power, low interest. That was a smooth, smooth segue. So those would probably be potentially, I guess, well, depending on the project and different things like that, someone with high power, like a CEO, but low interest, because they've got other things to worry about. So I think I've seen it somewhere where they're called, what's it called, like sleeping lions or something, where something like you know that they're there and you want to keep them satisfied, because if something starts to go wrong and they wake up, they could start causing an issue. So I guess the main thing for them is to keep them satisfied.
Oh yeah. What we don't want to do, like you say, is wake up the lions. A good example, like you say, is the CEOs. They're not going to be interested in your tender for picking your printer supplier. Potentially, like they just want their stuff to print, like, or it's just not in their interest. But if you cock it up, or if you're making mistakes and causing something that's going to get them involved, it could have a negative consequence on the outcome or kind of where you want to take your project. So quite often you just have to put in a bit of work, make sure they're content in what they're doing, maybe a brief update, something like that. But don't get too repetitive. Third segment is low power but high interest. So these guys, and the low power and high interest is actually quite, for me, was an easy one to remember. They're highly interested, and if you're interested in something, what you're trying to do, you're trying to find out as much as you can about what's happening. So if someone's always making inquiries, what do? You keep them informed. So for me, that's the group you've got to make sure your communications are on point to. You've got to basically inform them, not necessarily be guided by them or their decisions, but they can be useful in pointing out areas of improvement. So what I kind of saw as an example of this group was when there's changes going on at a school, you get the PTA, which is a parent teacher association or something like that, where parents of kids at the school have formed a community and they're there to give advice and counsel on changes that the school do make. So the PTA are highly interested in the school. Obviously it benefits their kids and it benefits the future generations, but they don't actually have any power to make the decisions. Often you would find the teachers would run the decisions past the PTA, and the PTA would say, well, that's great, but you've not thought about this, that, or the other.
So in a procurement perspective, could it be like what we mentioned earlier in terms of the people, when recipes and stuff like that get changed, like they're not going to be able to have any say in terms of what to add or take away from the recipe, but obviously they're interested in what goes down. Yeah, and I think it's like if it was me and I'm the procurement professional that's not involved in a particular role, but let's say I've got my employee hat on, and there was a tender being carried out for our new employee benefit provider. I'd be quite interested in that. I'd like to know what the progress is, and perhaps, if they're going to have private medical insurance, if they're going to have this, that, or the other. So I'd be highly interested, but in my role as just a standard employee, I wouldn't have any power to make tangible decisions. Cool. So if my maths is correct, gone.
On that as well, what you do see sometimes in tender situations is you might actually want to get a group of, like, a sample of people that are in this keep informed bracket and just seek their opinions. So you might just get a sample. You might take 2 or 3 staff members, you might take a couple of people from the Parents Teacher Association, bring them in so that they feel heard, informed, and like they've contributed to the actual decisions. Quite often you'll see managers employ that as a tactic for their teams as well. You know, they'll ask their teams to contribute to potential decisions, but the decisions may already be made or kind of out of their team's roles.
Yeah. Is that like when I've seen companies before, when they get junior staff members to like interview the potential CEOs?
Yeah.
Have
you seen that?
I've never
Where have you
been
seen that?
involved in. I don't know. I've just heard of it. I can't place exactly where. Must have been somewhere I worked before. Otherwise, how would I know about it? But yeah, I guess maybe they did actually want to involve them in the decision making. But yeah, that was a pointless ramble.
Yeah, no, but it's just that it depends on what situation you are looking at these stakeholders, and you know what the tender you're doing or what your procurement process is. But actually, just keeping them informed might not be enough in some situations. So it's one of those groups where you got to be mindful because it could backfire.
Yeah.
So how's your maths?
So
Maths.
if my maths is correct, we should have 2 boxes left, and because my maths is not correct, we've got one. Why did I phrase it like that? It's just making it more confusing. If my maths is correct, we've got 1 box left as the official mic comes out of the stand.
Yeah.
Which is I always feel sorry for these people. Low power, low interest, minimal effort you got to put into them.
They're not interested though, are they?
Yeah, true. That is true.
You know,
But it seems a bit. I don't know.
The office toilets are being refurbished. I'm an employee who goes to the office occasionally. I don't particularly care that the toilet's getting, I don't know, raised 3 inches and is going to be a bit of a wider rim. Like, I don't care about that. But all I want to know is give me a communication that says this is what's going on, this is when it'll be done, job done. The only time I'll kick up a fuss is if you're taking too long to deliver the project.
Yeah. That is true. That's true. If you don't have an interest in it, then you don't really want to be bombarded with communications or decisions about it, do you?
No, I always think, right, so the one I actually always end up feeling sorry for, and you probably tell by my earlier rant on it, is the low power, high interest, because they're interested, but you as the driving factor in the decisions don't really care because they're not that powerful. High power, high interest, to say everyone knows who they are, so you're managing them closely by nature. So going back to the low power, low interest individuals, you have to monitor them. And the one bit of advice I would give is that stakeholders can be fluid between these grids. So you want to document it at the start of your project. You know, identify the individuals you think are, let's say, high power, high interest, etc. But people that aren't interested or don't have power, that may shift over time.
Could we think about it quickly in a practical example for the podcast? Who is in which boxes? Or is that difficult?
Okay,
Should we pick a procurement instead?
So pick a procurement thing. So I'll be Jeff, and I'm doing a procurement. So my name's Jeff, and I'm doing procurement. Thank you. What am I going to procure on behalf of my company?
You're going to procure... I don't know why... Sorry. You know I love tangents. Keep that, what you were just saying in mind. After listening back to the episodes, I realised that I say procure. I don't say procure. Say procure.
Procure.
I think I elongate the U. Procure.
That's your northern accent though, isn't it? That's fine.
My thick Scottish accent. Okay. Tangent over. Time to go back to what you were saying. What are you going to procure? You're going to procure the bit on a can that you have to tip up to open it. I'm doing a visual on the screen, which is not helpful to anyone. Yes, exactly like the can you're holding up.
Okay, so
how would you name that?
I mean, you've literally picked the weirdest thing I've ever imagined. I thought we'd do something simple for our listeners, not a can.
Open.
Thing.
It's not. It's the bit that you flick up to open a can. There you go.
But
that's
surely I'm just buying a can.
No. You got to buy it separately. Your company makes cans.
Okay, and I need a lid
Widget.
Widget. Okay, I need a lid flicking widget for my can.
Sounds like
that's weird.
A lid flicking widget sounds like some sort of insult.
Yeah, you're right, old lid flicking widget. You are, mate. Okay, so I'm a procurement officer for a can producing company, and I need a lid flicking widgets for my cans. Because up until now we've had no way to open our can. Right. Who is highly powerful and highly interested in the lids for our cans?
The project manager for the project of making and selling the cans.
Yeah, I'd give you that. Yeah, the project manager / program director, whatever terminology they've got, and also probably the manufacturing logistics person. So whoever's responsible for the operation process end to end. You know, if they're making the rest of the can, they're going to want to know how this integrates, and they'll be fairly powerful in your decision.
Where do suppliers fit into it? Because in theory, I guess it depends how you define power, because they could have a lot of power in terms of they could decide to raise the price, to double the price.
They're not going to win the business then, are they?
But they've still got that power, haven't they?
Yeah, there's a degree of power there. I think that goes slightly different as to supplier classifications, and there's a different twang you can take on it. But probably let's just work through our internal sort of situation for now. So you're high power and less interested individuals?
The high power, less interested. The government who is putting a tax on you importing goods.
Okay, fair enough. Yep, I was thinking like HR director, something like that. I'm trying to keep it internal, but yeah, that also works.
Just variation, mate.
No, yeah, I'll give you that. I'm still processing the old lid flicking widget term in my head, to be honest.
Don't get that
low
wrong when you
power,
type it.
low power but highly interested.
That's a tough one. Maybe the people who have to staple each lid flicking widget onto the can.
Yep.
Because they haven't. Your company hasn't automated the process with robots yet.
So the actual staff who have to actually do the putting together.
Yeah.
I would potentially argue as well, maybe your customers. So if you're sending it to market, do you send it to retailers? Say you send it to Sainsbury's or Tesco's or whatever. Do you want to consult some of their customer base who might be interested because they've got sensitive lips, or they're missing fingers, right? Yeah, that's my example. For low power and highly interested, it might be your customers who regularly buy your products. Although technically, you might argue they're highly powerful. So if they're individuals, they're probably low power. But if it's a group like Tesco, who might be your biggest bulk buyer, then they're probably high power.
Yeah.
Maybe high power, less interest, to be fair. And then finally, low power and low interest. So broadly speaking, with this group, you've got to think of people that are loosely affiliated to the situation, not just, you can't just say like, oh, my grandma, like, you know what I mean?
I was about to give a shout out to Jacinda, who we know from emailing into the podcast, who says she's gone can free because she doesn't use cans, so she could be in that group, but she's not affiliated in any way.
So hang on, let me just get this right. So someone called Jacinda emailed us at 2lukes1sip@gmail.com telling us she's can free before we recorded an episode about
cans,
stakeholder management and cans.
Yeah. Well, it did have some other points in there. One of them was that she asked me to go on a rant about the Matrix. So once we wrap this up, then I've got a little rant to go on.
Okay, I think so. So for me, low power, low interest individuals for a lid flicking widget. What would I say? The canteen staff in your office. Low power, low interest. They're not going to. They might stock the things you sell, but they're not really bothered. Is what it is, right? So to summarise, hopefully that talks you through the example of some stakeholder groups that might fit into a situation, arguably a really weird situation, but a situation nonetheless. As I said earlier, it's really, really important that you are conscious of the fact that stakeholders can be moving between the groups. They might not be interested at first, but they might develop an interest, or someone might have a switch in position or a change of circumstances that actually gives them more power or less power. So it is a what's the word? It's a moving beast. It's not just a stagnant document.
Yeah, it's fluid. So my issue with, not necessarily with the Matrix itself, it's with other people's projections of the Matrix. It unnecessarily, what's the word? Not unnecessarily, unreasonably. It unreasonably annoys me that some things, when they show it, don't have low at the bottom left for both axes. Like, some things will show it with low power at the top and then low interest along the bottom.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense to me. So this is a threat to anyone who makes a visual of this Matrix. If I see anyone post this conversation putting them the wrong way round, then we will have to go to their house and chop their hair off.
I think I'm not talking about hair again. We're like 20 episodes deep, and all we talk about is Janet eventually. I mean, it's a matrix, right? But it's based on its cross shape in the middle. So it's the X and the Y axis like in the middle, and you can effectively put them in any quadrant you like, and it'll probably nearly almost work. So.
I disagree.
I think this is
you can't be putting them in any quadrant. They have an order, and the order is set. Low for interest is on the left, and high is on the right. For power, low's at the bottom, high's at the top. Simple.
For me, if you draw it like a quadrant, like a window quadrant, then the bottom left should be low, and the top right should be high.
Exactly.
That's the easiest way to do it and remember it, but you do get all sorts of wacky variations. I do agree with you there. Anything else for the listeners today, mate?
Yes. Potentially one for the next episode. I've seen a 3D axis, I believe, added onto some of these. That is something to do with supporting. Is that a thing? It's like it makes it into like a cube instead of a 2D square. Because then you could say, for example, you could have stakeholder with high interest, low power, who really hates the procurement team, or you could have stakeholder with the same high interest, low power, who loves the procurement team. So is that another variation of it?
I mean, it's not one I've come across actually, but equally, it's probably groundbreaking at the forefront of procurement as opposed to the SIPS textbooks, which sometimes need a little update here and there. But yeah, we can explore that. I think the other bit with stakeholders obviously is how we've defined in the first episode the different types of stakeholders. We've then now talked about the Mendelow stakeholder matrix and how you effectively box off your different stakeholders and maybe classify them. I think it's time we then move on to, we've now classified them, what the hell do we do with them? Apart from keeping satisfied, keeping informed, etc. What else needs to be done with their, relationship management? What techniques maybe need to be implemented? What is a RACI? All of that good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like this episode has covered quite a few of the basics of the Matrix.
That's what we do.
If you've listened to this and you've thought, well, I knew all of that, don't be put off. This was aimed at people who are stupider than you. And if you did take something away from this, then potentially you're too stupid to realise that I just called you stupid. Anyway,
I've got to admit, I don't like the way you slag off our loyal listeners in pretty much every episode at the moment, mate. We need to have a chat with that offline. But
tough love, mate.
Yeah, I'm not sure it works. I think for me, like, Mendelow's matrix comes up in every single level. It's always there. Like, you can never have enough of it, right? So let's just say you are, I don't know, walking your dog, walking your cat, walking your rabbit, and you just need a little bit of a refreshing bit on stakeholder management. You've got far more pressing topics that you need to cover before your exam. We've just given you a little refresh, a little tickle, a little brain poke, and now you're ready.
A little bit of pleasure in the air as well.
Oh yeah.
So stay tuned for a future episode of this series to kind of, we'll talk about the SIPS questions and we will tell you how to answer them. We've actually found access to SIPS's bank of questions. We've hacked into the system, so we know exactly what questions are going to come up for exactly what exams and exactly the right location. So listen to all of them, send us a $5, and maybe we'll tell you them.
Equally, if you want Luke 10 to be cancelled from this podcast, just let us know in the comments and give us a 5-star review. Be much appreciated.
Yes, please give us a review. Send us in an email on 2 Luke's 1 sip, Luke's plural, CIP @gmail.com.
The hardest email ever to explain, isn't it?
Makes us laugh though anyway, that's what matters.
Yeah.
I always say the thing about send this to someone if, but I feel like I should give it to you on an occasion.
Well, I wanna. If it was up to me, I'd scrap that bit anyway.
Scrap the whole of me in the podcast.
No, I would actually throw a challenge out to the listeners. One, if you know anyone in Botswana, then I'd love you to pass the pod to them, to give us a listen in Botswana or South Korea. We've had one South Korean listener. I'd like to at least double that. So that's a challenge to you. And if you do have a vested interest in procurement and you would love to join us on the show, please do email us, because we do love a good guest, as I'm sure you've learnt with both Sinead and Dr. Julian Wang.
Brilliant.
And on that note, see you later.
Goodbye, you lid flicking widget.